Hi, this is Rocco from Unmute.pro. I'm going to try to give you some tips and some advice on how to start your compositions. Part of your exam is to compose something, but very rarely you get someone explaining to you how to start the whole process. There are two types of compositions. One is free and the other one is briefed. The free one means that you can compose in any style that you like, so you have way less limitations. With the briefed one, you're going to have to follow certain rules, like a certain style of music, a certain amount of instruments, and so on. Most of the advice that I'm going to give you today applies to both, but the initial phase might be slightly different. One good way of dealing with a free composition is to listen to the music that you love. Once you listen to some songs that you relate to, try to identify which parts of those songs you could use as a starting point or a stimulus for you to compose the rest. There is a very thin line between taking inspiration and copying, but I recommend starting from an inspiration, and you will see that your composition will naturally go in a completely different direction from where you started from. Not every style of music is equally hard to compose for. So try to be smart about it. You don't need to impress anyone. You just need to demonstrate that you're capable of composing in a certain style of music. So start from music that you relate to, that is not too complicated. Find one musical idea that you like. Once you take that small idea or stimulus and you copy it into your DAW or music notation software, then you can take that small idea and develop it to the point where you can barely recognize it. Even though the free composition has way less constraints, I recommend trying to nest it inside the musical style that you have in mind. After all, you have to demonstrate that you have a good understanding of compositional techniques and you need to relate it to some music. That means that you don't need to impress anyone. After all, you need to compose something that is yours and creative, but you don't need to break every single rule. Every single bit of music that we listen to relates to centuries and centuries of experiences that you should use to your own advantage. Instead of thinking it as a limitation, try to take it positively. All the music that has been done until now is ready for you to use. It's like words in a dictionary that you can use to create your own sentences. If you're dealing with a briefed composition, I recommend listening to a number of examples of that style of music. And once again, as soon as you find a small idea that captures your attention, take that idea, copy it to your DAW, copy it to your music notation software. As a starting point, it doesn't take very long to change a small stimulus into something completely new and creative. In case you find really hard coming up with the first idea, try to listen to music you relate to, or try to listen to music related to the brief that you're composing for. Once you go through that music, you will surely find a moment in which a musical idea, it could be a simple rhythm, it could be an interval, it could be just a small melody, something like that will capture your attention. Take that idea and copy it on your DAW or music notation software. Once it's in there, it's very easy to manipulate to the point where it's not recognizable anymore. The important thing is that you find the stimulus, the initial energy to start your composition. Both the free composition and the briefed composition will benefit from having a number of ideas floating around. The first thing I would do is to collect 5 or 6 of them. Try not to fall in love with them. There's nothing written in stone, and it's absolutely not a problem discarding some ideas if they don't fit in your project. You will notice that some of the ideas you discarded at the beginning of the process might be really useful later on down the line, so nothing is wasted. So once you let your creative side go and you collected a number of ideas, you can select the ones that you like the most. Don't throw anything away. Once you have something on your software, it's very easy to fix it and adapt it to whatever need you have in that specific moment. Don't fall into the sensation of scrapping everything and start again from scratch. It's really not worth it. Come up with a number of ideas, select the ones that you like the most, and keep the other ones on the side. Once the creative job is done and you have some material to work on, give some space to the analytical side and just be smart about it. So, what form are you following? What kind of music are you relating to? What kind of music you can use as example of previous material? So the combination of your creative side, the ones that come up with all these beautiful, nice creative ideas, and the analytical side, which organizes all their work into something that is understood and appreciated, at that point you have both the elements that will make you a very good composer. When composing the brief composition, I recommend reading the brief very, very carefully. So many times in my past have I experienced students that worked a lot just to create something that doesn't fit the brief. It's very, very important that at the beginning of each session, especially in the initial phase, you read the brief over and over again, making sure that you address every single point of it. So if the brief specifies a number of instruments, set them ready in your project as first thing. Write all the requirements of your brief on a list and tick off every single thing that you address so that you're sure you won't leave anything behind. After all, if you hand in the best composition ever but is not following the brief, you will fail your exam. So it is very important that next to your creative side, you also develop your analytical one and you keep those two working together next to each other. A very good advice is not to fall in love with the ideas that you came up with. Just because you came up with it and just because you like that idea, it doesn't mean that fits in that specific project. So have a file somewhere with all the ideas that you haven't used yet, and you will see that it's very easy to recycle them and use them in situations that you didn't even know existed. Record as much as you can. Record on your DAW or music notation software. It's so much easier once it's in front of you to fix the things that could be fixed in order to improve the composition. The hardest thing of them all is to have absolutely no idea. So once you have something to work on, you will see that your instinct and all your musical knowledge will come into play and will support you in your path of creating something that is nice to listen to. Most music uses very clear form. So once you decide you compose in a certain kind of music, whether it is your free composition or the briefed one, sketch out your form in front of you so that you have a clear map of what you need to address. That will help you planning your work and pace it in a way that will have the best results possible. So if you're composing classical music, make sure you clearly mark A section, B section, C section, whichever form you decide to use. If you're writing pop music, make sure the distinction between introduction, verse, chorus is very, very clear. Mark the bridge very clearly so that you know you transition from one to the next. We're going to have a video about form very soon in which we talk about the different roles of different parts of each form type. But in general, once you decide your composition is going to be in a certain style of music, it is really helpful to map that form in a way that you have a clear overview of your composition. For some of the exams, you are allowed to hand in written notation. I recommend you using notation software or DAW because you have a direct experience of the music that you just recorded. It's very difficult to conceptualize music just in your head without hearing it. So using those tools to hear in real time what is that you're composing is very, very useful. If you don't have a notation software, I recommend use MuseScore, which is completely free and you can download it anytime. If you're using a DAW, it could be Logic, GarageBand, it could be Nuendo, it could be Ableton Live, it doesn't really matter. Use that in order to hear back what is that you're composing all the time. Try to be brutally honest with yourself. When you hear something that doesn't convince you 100%, work on it. You can ask your teachers, you can ask your tutors, and I'm sure they're going to help you in fixing the problems that you hear but you cannot yet identify. Sometimes all you need to start is a little idea, a stimulus, something that will kickstart your creativity. It could be a small rhythmical pattern or ostinato line, it could be a chord progression, it could be a melodic idea, it could be a simple interval. It doesn't really matter as long as it creates and awakens your creativity. So first step, even though it might feel a bit uncomfortable at first, just drop all the ideas that are coming to you on your software. Keep in mind that simple and easy are not the same thing. Sometimes the simplest ideas are the ones that are really coming across very strongly. And just because they're simple, it doesn't mean it's easy to compose them. So instead of working in the direction of being virtuosistic, showing off all your abilities, try to spend a bit of time creating something that is nice to listen to. If you find it nice to listen to it, many other people will probably have exactly the same experience with it. I will soon make a video in which we use a small rhythmical idea or a small chord progression or an interval to kickstart your composition.